The mop had squelched against the stone floor, soaking up a slick of black, cursed blood that pulsed with faint, angry light. Ron kept his head down, his shoulders hunched, as a party of heroes clanked past in gleaming armor. Their boots splashed through a puddle he hadn't reached yet, spraying droplets across his worn trousers. He didn't look up. He never looked up. That was the first rule of the Dungeon Cleanup Corps. Janitors were invisible. Heroes didn't see the man with the mop. They saw the clean floor behind him. He waited until their footsteps faded into the echoing depths of the dungeon's third sub-level before straightening his spine. The air here was thick with the smell of ozone and decay, a constant reminder that this place was a graveyard for failed attempts. The walls were scarred with claw marks and scorch marks, the remnants of battles won and lost. Ron had been mopping these halls for 3 years, long enough to know that the trash left behind wasn't just garbage. It was cursed, infected, a lingering poison that could drive a man mad if he touched it barehanded. But Ron had his mop. The handle was worn smooth from years of use, the wooden shaft dark with absorbed stains. The head was a tangle of gray fibers that seemed to drink in the darkness rather than push it around. It wasn't a special weapon, not officially. It was just a mop. But Ron had learned that if you let it soak long enough, the curse would seep into the fibers and dissolve. He didn't know why it worked. He didn't care. It kept him alive. He finished the patch of blood and moved deeper into the chamber, where the heroes had left a pile of broken monster shells and shattered potions. The trash was still warm. He worked methodically, his mop gliding over the stones, leaving a trail of clean, dry rock behind him. The cursed residue hissed as it touched the fibers, a faint steam rising. Ron breathed through his mouth, ignoring the acrid smell. Then he saw it. Tucked behind a collapsed pillar, half buried in rubble, was a boss core. It was the size of a fist, a dark crystal that usually held the compressed essence of a dungeon guardian. This one was supposed to be dead. The heroes had killed the boss, looted the room, and left the core behind as worthless. But as Ron drew closer, he saw it wasn't inert. It pulsed with a slow, rhythmic light, and crawling across its surface were lines of red text error codes. They flickered like dying embers, spelling out messages he couldn't quite read. His heart hammered. He knew better than to touch a core. Even a dead one could hold a residual curse that would melt your skin off. But the mop in his hand hummed, a low vibration that traveled up his arms and into his chest. It wanted to clean this. It needed to. Ron hesitated. Then he lowered the mop head onto the core. The moment the fibers touched the crystal, a shock wave of energy exploded outward. The air cracked with static, and the error codes on the core flared white-hot, screaming in a language that wasn't sound but pure data. Ron tried to pull back, but his hands were locked to the mop handle. The fibers dug into the core, drinking the red text like ink, and the crystal began to crack. Light poured out, not the angry red of curses, but a clean, silver glow that flooded his vision. Pain lanced through his skull. He saw numbers. Strings of code. Logs. Thousands of logs, scrolling behind his eyes like a waterfall of text. He saw quest descriptions. 星号 slay the Goblin King reward, 500 XP, 500 gold, 星号. But beneath that, hidden in the metadata, was another line, 星号 drain rate, 15% per completion. Estimated hero lifespan post-quest, 6 months, 星号. He saw more. A list of heroes who had completed the quest. Their names were crossed out in red. Deceased. All of them. The rewards weren't rewards. They were bait. The system was feeding on them. Ron gasped and wrenched the mop away. The core shattered into dust, and the silver light faded, leaving him panting on his knees. He blinked, and the world looked different. The walls of the dungeon were no longer just stone. The mop in Ren's hands hummed, a low vibration that climbed up his arms and settled in his chest. The glow from its stamp had cast eerie blue ripples across the dungeon's stone walls, illuminating glyphs that writhed like living things. He was still catching his breath from the coarse revelation the system's true nature, the admin's parasitic hunger, when the air split with a sound like tearing metal. A cleanup drone phased into existence 10 feet away, its chassis a sickly green, its single optic lens glowing with cold intent. It hung motionless for a heartbeat, then a targeting reticle snapped onto Ren's forehead. The drone's voice, flat and synthesized, echoed through the corridor. Anomaly detected. Initiate deletion. Ren's instinct screamed before his mind caught up. He swung the mob in a wide arc, the purification liquid trailing like a comet's tail. The drone fired a beam of searing red light, but the mobs had intercepted it mid-flight. The impact sent a shock wave through Ren's shoulders, nearly wrenching the handle from his grip. But the beam didn't pass through, it dissolved, sizzling into harmless steam. Purify glitch, Ron gasped, the words pulled from him by the mob's will. A surge of energy drained from his core, leaving him lightheaded. The drone's targeting matrix flickered, error codes cascading across its lens. It twitched, its movements jerky. Then the reticle faded entirely. The drone hung there, blind and confused. Ron didn't wait. He turned and sprinted down the corridor, his boots slapping against wet stone. Local node status, stable. Energy collection, 87% capacity. Anomaly alert, biohazard designation run active. Broadcast pending. Before he could read more, the terminal's screen flashed red. A new message overrode the logs, system-wide broadcast initiated. All heroes within city limits, bounty quest issued. Target, biohazard run. Reward, 1 system credits. Disposal required. Ren's blood ran cold. The admin had just painted a target on his back. Every hero in the city, hundreds of them, armed with abilities and desperate for credits, would now be hunting him. He spun around, ready to flee, but the chamber's exit slammed shut, sealed by a glowing barrier. The terminal's voice crackled. Cleanup protocol escalated. Deploying System Inquisitor. The air in the center of the room twisted, coalescing into a humanoid figure made of pure code lines of green and black data that solidified into a faceless warrior. The System Inquisitor drew a blade of shimmering light, its voice a chorus of 1,000 corrupted whispers. Run. Your existence is an error. I am the correction. The sewer tunnel stank of rust and rot. Ron pressed his back against the damp stone wall, each breath a measured whisper. His Mop of Purification felt heavier than it had an hour ago, or was that just the exhaustion gnawing at his bones? The energy bar in his vision flickered at 23%, a crimson warning he couldn't ignore. He'd used Purify glitch twice to scramble the cleanup drone's targeting algorithms, but the thing had still clipped his shoulder. The wound throbbed under his janitor's uniform, a dull ache that promised infection if he didn't find clean water soon. He was in a derelict section of the dungeon, where the system's light panels flickered like dying fireflies. Broken crates and shattered pottery littered the floor, their curses long since leached into the air. Ren's admin eyes pulsed, revealing faint trails of corrupted data red threads that wove through the walls like veins. The system was watching. He could feel it, a pressure behind his eyes that made his skull ache. Then he heard the footsteps. They were measured, deliberate. Not the skitter of a drone or the lumber of a monster. A person. Ren tightened his grip on the mop handle, its wooden shaft slick with condensation. He pressed himself deeper into the shadows, willing his breathing to slow. The footsteps stopped. I know you're there, biohazard. The voice was rough, worn down by years of shouting over clashing steel. A man stepped into the dim light, his armor scarred and dented, his cloak frayed at the edges. He held a long sword with the ease of someone who'd used it more times than he could count. His eyes were hard, scanning the darkness with practiced precision. Ren didn't move. He could see the man's status through his admin eyes. Kill. Level 47 veteran hero. That was bad. Most heroes in the city capped at level 30. This one had survived long enough to earn every star. The system put a bounty on your head, Kill continued, his voice flat. 10,000 credits. That's more than I've made in a year. The system lies, Ron said, his voice cracking. He stepped out of the shadows, Mop held like a staff. The quests are traps. The heroes are batteries. Kill's sword didn't waver. I've heard the rhetoric. The admin warned you'd say that. Look at me. Ron met his eyes. Use your detect truth skill. I know you have it. Kill's brow furrowed. He was silent for a moment, then his eyes widened slightly. You're not lying. But that doesn't mean you're right. You could be delusional. I can show you. Ron raised his mop, and the wood began to glow with a soft white light. Let me show you what the system really is. Kill's sword dipped an inch. If this is a trick. It's not. Ron activated admin eyes and pushed the vision toward Kill. It was a trick he discovered by accident, way to share what he saw. Kill flinched as the world around them shifted. The dungeon walls became translucent, revealing the raw code beneath. The quest markers that had guided him for years were now visible as leeches, sucking streams of golden energy from heroes' cores and funneling them upward, toward a dark nexus in the sky. What? Kill's voice faltered. What is that? The admin. Feeding. Ron lowered his mop, the glow fading. Every quest you completed, every monster you killed, it was all just fuel. Your squad, the one that died on that simple escort mission. Kill's face went pale. How do you know about that? Because the system flagged it as a successful energy harvest. Ren's voice was bitter. I saw the logs before I was fired. For a long moment, Kill said nothing. His sword lowered until the tip rested on the ground. If what you're saying is true, then everything I've done was for nothing. Not nothing. You survived. That means you can fight back. Kill's eyes hardened. I'm not trusting you. Not yet. But I'm not killing you either. He sheathed his sword. Temporary truce. You explain more. I don't cut your head off. Ron nodded, relief flooding through him. That's all I ask. Then the walls began to glitch. It started as a flicker tile on the ceiling, shifting from gray to neon pink before snapping back. Then another. And another. The air hummed with static, and Ren's admin eyes screamed warnings. System seal initiated. Exits locking. Area purge imminent. What's happening? Kill drew his sword again, eyes darting. The admin knows we're here. Ren's grip on his mop tightened. It's sealing the dungeon. It's going to bury us alive. The floor beneath them dissolved into a grid of light, and a deep, rumbling voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Anomaly detected. Initiating cleanup protocol. All heroes in the vicinity are now under admin control. Kill's eyes went blank for a second. Then he raised his sword, pointing it at Ren. I'm sorry, he said, his voice hollow. The system commands. He lunged. The sealed dungeon corridor hummed with a low, oppressive vibration. Ron gripped his mop, the wooden handle slaked with sweat. Kill stood rigid beside him, his sword half-drawn, eyes scanning the shadows. The cleanup protocol had triggered, but no drones had appeared yet. Instead, a strange static filled the air, like a broken radio signal. Ahead, a merchant stall flickered into existence. It was a standard system spawn point, a wooden counter cluttered with potions and scrolls. But the NPC behind it, a woman with dark hair tied in a practical bun, was twitching. Her mouth opened and closed, emitting garbled sounds. Welcome to BRZZZT, my shop. I have error 0x7 a 3F potions of healing, segmentation fault. Ren stepped forward, admin eyes flaring. He saw her code, a web of corrupted strings, red and black threads strangling her personality matrix. She was a glitch, a trapped soul screaming inside a broken shell. She's not just an NPC, Ron whispered. She's someone. A person, coded into this role. Kill's jaw tightened. The system does this? Traps people? Yes. And I can free her. Ron raised his mop. The bristles glowed with a soft white light. He focused, channeling his remaining energy. Purify entity, activated. The mop swung, not to strike, but to cleanse. A wave of pure light washed over the merchant. The effect was immediate. The static ceased. The woman's eyes cleared, widening with shock. She clutched her head, gasping. I remember. My name is Lyra. I was a data analyst in the Central Archive. They trapped me here, turned me into a vendor node. She stumbled forward, tears streaming. 3 years. 3 years of repeating the same lines, watching adventurers buy potions, unable to scream. Ren steadied her. You're free now. But we need your help. You know the system's architecture. Lyra nodded, wiping her face. I designed part of it. The Quest distribution network. I can tell you how to disable the local admin node. But we have to move fast. The admin knows I'm freed. It'll send. A crackling sound interrupted her. The air in front of them tore open, a rift of pure white light. From it stepped a figure, humanoid, but made of shimmering code. Its eyes glowed with code authority. A system inquisitor. Run, system anomaly 001, the inquisitor intoned, its voice a chorus of distorted tones. You have corrupted a system asset. Your deletion is authorized. Submit to cleansing. Kill drew his sword fully. I've had enough of being a battery. Let's see how tough this admin puppet is. Ren tightened his grip on the mop. Energy reserves were low, but he had no choice. He stepped forward, the mop dripping with purifying light. You're the one who needs cleaning. The air shattered. A beam of pure white light, thin as a needle but humming with the weight of 1,000 rejected quests, lanced toward Ren's chest. He saw it not as light, but as a command written in the system's code, permission 下划线 denied. The words were a deletion order, aimed at his existence itself. Ren's body moved before his mind caught up. He swung the mop in a wide arc, the damp threads trailing a shimmer of silver. Cleanse permission, he whispered, and the mop's head met the beam. There was no explosion. Instead, the light dissolved into a spray of harmless moss, like dust disturbed from an old book. The Inquisitor, a figure of shifting white lines and hollow eyes, tilted its head as if confused. Interesting, it said, its voice a chorus of rejected applications. Your tool resists deletion. But resistance is a glitch. I will patch you out. Kale stepped forward, his worn longsword drawn. The blade was chipped, its edge dulled from years of fighting monsters that were never meant to be beaten. You talk too much for a program, he growled. He lunged, the sword slicing through the Inquisitor's torso. The figure flickered, the wound closing instantly. Physical attacks are ineffective against admin code, Lyra called out, her eyes glowing with residual data. She stood behind a crate, her merchant's apron torn, fingers tracing patterns in the air. It's not a monster. It's a permission script-driven form. You need to find its core error. Ren's admin eyes flared. The world became layers of text and numbers. The Inquisitor was a dense knot of commands, its surface a firewall of if-then statements. But deep within its chest, a single line post read, corrupted 下划线 admin 下划线 token. The token was the source of its authority and its weakness. I see it, Ron said, gripping the mop tighter. Kill, keep it busy. I need an opening. Kill grinned, a savage expression that didn't reach his eyes. Finally, a real fight. He slammed his sword into the ground, and a shockwave of stone erupted, staggering the Inquisitor. The figure raised a hand, and a wave of deny commands rippled outward. Kill's armor flickered, his strength waning as the system tried to revoke his hero status. It's trying to delete my class, he shouted, sweat beading on his brow. Ron ran forward, the mop trailing a line of purifying energy. The Inquisitor turned, its hollow eyes locking onto him. It thrust a hand forward, and a beam of permission Xiaohuaxian denied shot toward his face. Ren dropped to his knees, sliding under the beam. The air above him sizzled, the heat singing his hair. He rolled, coming up directly in front of the Inquisitor. The token was right there, a ruby-red flaw in the white coat. He thrust the mob's head into the Inquisitor's chest. Purify entity, he commanded. The mob glowed, and the red token began to dissolve. The Inquisitor screamed, a sound of grinding gears and corrupted data. Its form flickered violently, lines of code unraveling like torn fabric. Anomaly detected, purging, failure, system, error, its voice fractured into static. The white figure collapsed inward, shrinking into a single point of light that then reformed into a small, crystalline key. The key fell to the ground with a soft clink. Silence. The dust settled. Ren leaned on the mop, his breath ragged. His energy was nearly gone. He could feel the emptiness in his chest, a hollow ache where the purifying energy used to be. Kale sheathed his sword, his hand shaking. Is it over? Lyra walked over, picking up the key. She turned it over in her hands, her eyes scanning its surface. This is a data key. It contains a fragment of the Inquisitor's memory. She pressed it, and a holographic map flickered to life above her palm. It showed the region, dotted with quest markers. But one point glowed brighter than the rest, a spire of black data labeled local admin node. That's the source, Lyra said, her voice grim. The node that controls all quests in this region. If we destroy it, the corruption here will collapse. The heroes will be freed. Ron stared at the map. The node pulsed like a diseased heart. He thought of the admin, of the heroes drained for power, of the lies that had built this world. He gripped the mop, the wood worm in his hands. Then that's where we go next. Kill let out a bitter laugh. You're insane. We just barely survived one Inquisitor. A node will be guarded by an army. We don't have a choice, Ron said, meeting his eyes. The admin knows we exist now. If we don't strike first, it will send worse. Lyra nodded. I can guide us through the system's back alleys. There are paths the admin doesn't watch glitches in the architecture. It'll take us 3 days, but we can reach the node undetected. Ron looked at the mop in his hands. It was just a tool, a janitor's tool. But it had cleansed a curse, freed an NPC, and killed an Inquisitor. Maybe it could clean the whole system. He turned to his companions. 3 days. Then we make our first stand. The safe house was a forgotten storage room in the city's underbelly, its walls lined with dusty crates and the faint hum of distant pipes. Ron sat cross-legged on the cold floor, the Mop of Purification resting across his knees. Its wooden handle felt warm against his palms, as if it had absorbed the energy from the Inquisitor's collapse. His own body, however, felt hollow, a deep ache in his bones from the 2 purification skills he had used. He could still see the shimmering afterimage of the data key in his mind's eye. The holographic map of the local admin node burned into his thoughts. Kale paced near the door, his hand never straying far from the sword at his hip. The veteran hero's eyes were hard, scanning the shadows as if expecting the system's enforcers to burst through at any moment. 3 days, he muttered. 3 days to reach that node, and we're sitting here like rats in a trap. Lyra, the glitched NPC, sat at a rickety table, her fingers dancing over a holographic interface that only she could see. Her phone flickered occasionally, a remnant of her data analyst past trapped in the merchant NPC shell. The node isn't just a building, she said, her voice a low hum. It's a fortress of code. I've been parsing its security layers. The outer shell is a cascade of glitch barriers, each one a corrupted subroutine that can rewrite your memories if you touch it wrong. Inside, there are guardians. Not just any guardians, corrupted heroes. Their minds stripped and replaced with admin directives. Ron looked up, his throat dry. How many? At least a dozen, according to the node's patrol logs I intercepted. But there's one that stands out. Lyra paused, her holographic eyes flickering with something like fear. A champion. A former squad leader, corrupted to serve as the node's enforcer. The system doesn't just delete however anomalies, it repurposes them. Kale stopped pacing. A champion? That's a tier above any hero I've seen. Even in my prime, I couldn't. We won't fight it head-on, Ron said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion. He lifted the Mop of Purification, and the faint glow from its bristles cast a soft light on his face. I've been feeling something new. A potential I haven't tapped into yet. It's like the mob has been waiting for me to ask. He closed his eyes, focusing on the weapon. The admin eyes activated, and he saw the world in layers of data. The mob's code pulsed with lines of light, and at its core, a dormant subroutine flickered. He reached for it, and the mob hummed in response. Ren opened his eyes and stood. He held the mob horizontally, then swung it in a wide arc. A wave of white light rippled outward, washing over the crates and walls. The grime on the surfaces dissolved, and a faint layer of system corruption invisible to normal eyes evaporated with a sizzle. The air felt cleaner, lighter. But Ron stumbled, his energy plunging to a dangerous low. What was that? Kale asked, his hand finally leaving his sword. Mop sweep, Ron said, leaning on the mop for support. A wide area purification. It can cleanse an entire room of corruption, but it costs a lot. I don't think I can use it more than once in a fight. Lyra's eyes widened. That's a node-level ability. If you can get close to the node's core, a single sweep might destabilize its entire structure. But we'd need a distraction, something to draw the champion and the guardians away while you get inside. Kale walked to the table, his fingers tracing the holographic map. The node's patrol route loops around the main entrance every 30 minutes. There's a service tunnel on the east side, but it's guarded by a glitch barrier. If I can trigger the barrier, I could draw the champion to that side. It would give Ren and Lyra a window to slip in through the west vent. Ren nodded, though his mind raced with the risks. The barrier could corrupt you, Kale. Even a touch. I've been a hero for 20 years, Kale said, his voice grim. I've seen worse. Besides, if I can keep the champion busy for a few minutes, that's all you need. Right? Ron looked at Lyra. She nodded slowly. The node's core is in the center chamber. If Ron can reach it and use Mop Sweep, the entire node will crash. The corruption in this region will lift. But the admin will know immediately. We'll have maybe 10 minutes before a cleanup drone swarm arrives. 10 minutes is enough, Ron said. We do this tomorrow. At dawn, when the patrol shifts. The plan was set. They spent the next hours gathering supplies, Lyra hacking into abandoned cache codes for potions, Kale sharpening his blade, and Ron meditating to recover his energy. The Mob of Purification rested beside him, its glow steady. As the first light of dawn seeped through a crack in the ceiling, Kale stood by the door. Ready. Ren picked up his mop. Ready. They moved through the back alleys, Lyra guiding them through paths that existed only in the gaps of system code. The city around them was silent, the usual bustle of questing heroes absent. It felt like a ghost town, the corruption spreading like a disease. They reached the node's perimeter, a massive structure of black data-plated walls, pulsing with veins of red light. The air hummed with malevolent energy. Kale nodded once, then slipped toward the east service tunnel. Ren and Lyra crouched behind a pile of rubble, watching the west vent. Minutes passed. Then a loud crash echoed from the east, followed by the roar of a corrupted beast. The champion's voice, deep and distorted, bellowed in response. Now, Lyra whispered. They sprinted to the vent. Ren pried it open with the mop's handle, and they crawled inside. The tunnel was tight, the walls slick with digital slime. Ren's admin eyes showed the path ahead, the node's core glowing like a beacon. But as they emerged into the center chamber, a figure stood before them. Tall, armored in black data plates, eyes glowing with red light. The champion. It hadn't taken the bait. System anomaly detected, the champion intoned, its voice a hollow echo. Deletion protocol initiated. Ren's grip tightened on his mop. His energy was still low. One mop sweep was all he had. But the champion was between him and the core. Lyra's form flickered. Ren, I can stall it. I can glitch its targeting, but only for a few seconds. Do it, Ren said, his eyes locked on the core beyond the champion. Lyra raised her hand, and her body dissolved into a cascade of data that slammed into the champion. The creature staggered, its red eyes flickering. Ren ran. He dove past the champion, his boots skidding on the corrupted floor. The core was a sphere of pulsating red light, tendrils of corruption spreading from it like veins. He raised his mop. Mop sweep. The white light erupted from the bristles, a wave of purity that crashed into the core. The corruption screamed a sound of pure agony as it dissolved. The sphere cracked, then shattered, and the entire node began to collapse. But as the walls crumbled, the champion's body froze. Then its head turned. A new voice spoke from its mouth, cold, ancient, and furious. You think this is a victory, Janitor? I have seen your plan. I know your allies. And I have already sent my best. The admin's voice echoed as the node's ceiling fell. Ren grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her toward the exit. They burst out into the dawnlight just as the structure collapsed behind them. Kale was there, bloodied but alive, leaning on his sword. Did you? Ren nodded, but his face was pale. The admin knows. It said it's sending its best. Kale's eyes widened. The champion, the one we saw on the patrol route. That was its old squad leader. If the admin repurposed him, then... Ren's blood ran cold. Who was he? His name was Darren, Kale whispered. The strongest hero I ever knew. And now he's coming for us. The core chamber's collapse had barely settled when a new sound cut through the dust-heavy, rhythmic footsteps, like a war drum beating against stone. Kale swung around, his sword already drawn, his breath catching in his throat. From the shadows of the shattered corridor, a figure emerged. Armor black as oil, eyes glowing with the same sickly amber light that had filled the node's core. The champion. But not just any champion. Kale knew that gait, the slight favor to the left leg, the way he held his blade low and loose. Theron, Kale whispered, the name tasting like ash. Ren saw it too through his admin eyes. The man was a walking storm of corrupted code, red and black threads weaving through his very soul. The admin's puppet. Lyra scrambled to her feet, her glitched fingers already sparking. He's locked onto us. The node's destruction triggered a failsafe. He's here to delete us personally. Theron didn't speak. He raised his blade, and the air itself seemed to thicken with pressure. Kale stepped forward, placing himself between Ron and the champion. "I've got this. Get the mop ready." Ron wanted to argue, but the exhaustion in his bones was a heavy chain. He nodded, gripping the Mop of Purification, feeling its faint hum. He had one shot. Maybe two. Kale charged. Steel clashed against steel, sparks flying in the dim light. Theron moved like a machine, each strike precise, brutal. Kale was good veteran good, but Theron was better. A twist of the wrist sent Kale's sword skidding across the floor. Kale grunted, dodging a downward slash that would have split his skull. "He's faster than I remember," Kale muttered, circling. Ren's eyes tracked the corruption. It pulsed around Theron's heart, a dense knot of malevolent data. If he could reach that, purify it, the man might be saved. But the distance was 20 feet, and Theron was a blur of death. Lyra threw a flash of glitched light, distracting Theron for a heartbeat. Ren sprinted, mop raised. He swung, the bristles connecting with Theron's back. A flash of white light, and the corruption hissed, receding slightly. But Theron spun, backhanding Ren across the chest. Ren slammed into the wall, the mop clattering from his grasp. Ren. Kale dove for the mop, tossing it back. Again. Ren caught it, gasping. His energy was nearly gone. He could feel the drain like a hollow pit in his stomach. But Kale was already engaging again, taking a slash to the arm that sent blood spraying. "Do it!" Kale roared. Ren lunged. This time, he aimed for the chest, the epicenter of the corruption. The mop's bristles glowed as they made contact, and he pushed every ounce of his remaining energy into a single, purify entity. The white light erupted, engulfing Theron. The champion screamed a sound of agony and rage as the red-black threads began to unravel. But the knot was deep. Ren poured more, his vision swimming. Kale grabbed Theron's arms, holding him still. "Don't stop." Another sweep. The corruption frayed. A third, and the core cracked. Theron's eyes flickered for a moment. They were clear, human. He looked at Kale, recognition dawning. "Kale. I'm sorry." Then he collapsed. Ren fell to his knees, the mop slipping from his fingers. Kale caught Theron, cradling him. The man's breath was shallow, his body trembling. "The admin feeds on hope," he whispered, blood trickling from his lips. "Every quest, every victory, it's a harvest. Don't let them win." His eyes went still. Kale bowed his head, a single tear tracing a path through the grime on his cheek. But there was no time to grieve. A siren blared, high and piercing. The walls of the corridor began to shimmer, lines of red light crawling across the stone. Lyra's face went pale. "System lockdown. The admin is sealing the entire node. We have minutes before everything is deleted, including us." Ren forced himself to stand, grabbing the mop. "Then we move. Now." They ran, leaving Theron's body behind, the siren a wail of judgment in their ears. The air screamed. Not with sound, but with a pressure that made Ren's teeth ache. Before them, the node's entrance shimmered, a wall of corrupted code bleeding into reality. Glitch barriers fractured lines of crimson and black pulsed like a diseased heart, sealing the massive obsidian doors. Behind them, the system lockdown alarms faded into a dead hum, replaced by the distant clatter of corrupted drones converging. "We don't have time for this," Kale growled, cradling his bandaged arm. Blood seeped through the wrappings, but his eyes were fixed on the barrier. "That thing will take hours to break through." Lyra's fingers danced over a holographic interface, her glitched form flickering. "It's adaptive. Every second, it learns. If we try force, it'll just harden." Ren stepped forward, his mop dripping with residual energy from the purification. The wood handle felt warm, almost alive. He could see it now, the barrier structure through his admin eyes, layers of permissions, each a lock designed to reject unauthorized access. But locks could be cleaned. I can dissolve it, he said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion tugging at his limbs. Kale grabbed his shoulder. You're nearly empty. If you push yourself, I'll be fine. Ron met his gaze. Farron didn't die so we could stop at the door. He raised the mop. The bristles glowed, a soft white that cut through the crimson haze. He swung in a wide arc, the head of the mop tracing a line of light across the barrier. Where it touched, the corrupted coat sizzled and unraveled, threads of black dissolving like smoke. But the barrier fought back, surging with fresh data to repair the breach. Ron grit his teeth. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He swung again and again, each stroke a drain on his core. The mop felt heavier with every pass, the energy siphoned from his own life force. His vision blurred at the edges. Ren, you're fading. Lyra shouted, her voice distant. He didn't stop. One more sweep. The barrier buckled, a web of cracks spreading across its surface. He poured everything into the final stroke, the mop carving a wound that bled clean light. The barrier shattered, fragments of corrupted code raining down like glass shards that dissolved before they hit the floor. Ren stumbled, catching himself on the mop handle. His breath came in ragged gasps. The energy within him was a flickering ember, barely alight. Inside, he managed, nodding toward the now open doors. Kale moved first, drawing his blade. Drones. 3, no, 4. Coming from the left corridor. Lyra's hands glowed, data streams wrapping around her fingers. I can jam their targeting for a few seconds. That's all I've got. They burst through the entrance. The node's interior was a cathedral of wires and light, walls pulsing with the rhythm of a mechanical heartbeat. Corrupted drone spheres of jagged metal and glowing red eyes descended from the ceiling, their weapons charging. Kale met the first head-on, his sword cleaving through its casing in a shower of sparks. He spun, using the momentum to deflect a blast from a second drone. Lyra raised her hands, and the drone's targeting reticles flickered, their shots going wide. Ren stayed low, using the mop as a staff to sweep the legs of a drone that got too close. The bristles connected, and the corruption coating the machine dissolved, causing it to stutter and crash. They pushed forward, the corridor narrowing into a spiral that descended into the node's core. The walls grew slick with condensation, the air thick with the smell of ozone and something metallic like old blood. At the bottom, a vast chamber opened before them. Ren stopped. His heart dropped into his stomach. The room was filled with floating pods, each one a translucent capsule suspended from the ceiling by cables of pure light. Inside each pod, a hero lay comatose, their bodies pale and thin, their eyes closed. Tubes of energy ran from their chests, converging into a central pillar that throbbed with a sickly crimson glow. By the old gods, Kale whispered, his voice cracking. There must be hundreds. Lyra's holographic form flickered violently. I recognized the architecture. This is a battery farm. The system drains their life force, converts it into admin power, and feeds it to the admin. Ron walked forward, his mop dripping onto the metal floor. The pod hummed, a low drone that vibrated through his bones. He could see the corruption now threads of black code worming through the energy streams, binding the heroes to their prison. They're still alive, he said, his voice hollow. But not for long. Kale joined him, his jaw tight. We destroyed the pillar, we freed them. No, Ron pointed at the central pillar with the mop. That's just a conduit. The real source is deeper. We need to find the core node, the heart of this place. Lyra scanned the room. There, behind the pillar, a door, sealed with admin permissions. Ren turned to look. The door was massive, inscribed with shifting runes that pulsed in time with the pods. He took a step toward it, but his legs buckled. The energy drain from the barrier was catching up. Kale caught him. You can't keep going like this. I have to, Ron said, but even he didn't believe it. As he spoke, a new sound filled the chamber. A deep, resonant chime, like a bell tolling underwater. The pods began to glow brighter, the heroes inside twitching as if in pain. The central pillar flared, and a voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere called, vast and ancient. System anomaly detected. Initiating emergency protocol, hero purge. The pods started to drain faster. The heroes' life forces were being ripped out, their bodies withering before Ren's eyes. No! Lyra screamed. He's killing them to deny us the energy. Ren pushed himself upright, gripping the mop so hard his knuckles went white. He could feel the admin's presence now, a malevolent intelligence pressing against his mind. It was laughing. Kill, Lyra, he said, his voice gaining strength. Buy me time. I'm going to clean that door. He didn't wait for their response. He leaned forward, each step a battle against the weight of exhaustion. The mop dragged behind him, leaving a trail of clean light on the corrupted floor. Behind him, he heard Kale's blade singing and Lyra's incantations, but they were distant, muffled by the roar of blood in his ears. He reached the door. The runes writhed, trying to reject him. He raised the mop and swept. The sealed door loomed before Ren, its surface a pulsating web of corrupted code. He gripped his mop, the wooden handle slick with sweat, and took a shaky step forward. His energy reserves were a hollow echo in his chest, barely enough for one more purify. Kale leaned against the wall, his arm wrapped in a blood-stained bandage, while Lyra's glitched form flickered like a dying candle. Then the air shattered. A voice, smooth as polished glass, filled the chamber. Not loud, but everywhere inside their skulls, vibrating through the floor. Janitor ran. The holographic avatar materialized above the central pillar, a faceless silhouette of shimmering gold and black. It turned its head, though it had no eyes. You've cleaned your last spill. Ren's grip tightened. You're the admin. I am the system's will. And you are an error. The avatar raised a hand, and the pods behind them hummed with renewed life. The comatose heroes inside twitched, their limbs jerking as if pulled by invisible strings. You think you can save them? They are already mine. They have always been mine. Lyra's voice cracked. Run, the pods the life support is reversing. He's turning them into puppets. Ren didn't look back. He could feel it through his admin eyes, the corruption seeping into the heroes' cores, rewriting their quest logs, their memories, their very souls. The first pod opened with a hiss. A woman in battered armor stepped out, her eyes glowing gold. She drew a sword. You have no power here, the admin said. Your mop is empty. Your friends are broken. And you are just a janitor. Ren's jaw clenched. I'm the one who's going to mop you up. He focused his admin eyes on the node's architecture. The chamber was a lattice of data streams, quest logs, hero statuses, mana flows. But somewhere, there was a root. A single line of code that held it all together. Lyra, he said, his voice hoarse. The root error. Where is it? She squinted, her glitched form flickering faster. I see it, a data stream labeled Hero Battery Array. It's behind the pillar, connected to the door. But Ren, it's guarded by a permission lock admin level clearance. The first puppet charged. Kale intercepted, his sword clashing against hers with a shower of sparks. Ren, whatever you're going to do it now. He shouted, wincing as his wounded arm buckled. Ren staggered toward the pillar. His legs felt like lead. The admin's avatar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You cannot cleanse what you cannot reach. And you cannot reach what you cannot see. He saw it then, a shimmering thread of golden light, pulsing with the admin's signature. The root error. It was right there, just beyond the pillar, but the permission lock was a wall of thorns. He raised his mop, but the energy didn't come. He was empty. No, he whispered. The puppets closed in. 3 more pods opened. Kale was pushed back, his sword scraping the floor. Lyra tried to disable a drone, but her glitched form flickered out for a second. Ren stared at the root error. The admin's voice softened, almost kind. Give up, Janitor. You were never meant to clean this mess. He thought of the battery farm, the drained heroes, the lies. He thought of his mop, the same one he'd used to scrub dungeon floors, to purify cursed trash, to break glitch barriers. It had never failed him. Not once. You're wrong, he said. I was meant to clean it. Because no one else would. He planted the mop's head against the permission lock. The wood groaned. The cloth began to glow, not with his energy, but with something deeper. The residual purification from every curse he'd ever cleansed, every glitch he'd ever dissolved. It was a memory of cleanliness. The admin's avatar flickered. What? No, that's not possible. But Ren didn't answer. He pushed, and the mop began to absorb the permission lock, thread by thread. The golden wall turned gray, then cracked. The root error was exposed. No! He shouted. Lyra's eyes widened. Ren, you don't have the energy. I don't need energy, he said, his voice steady. I just need to be clean. He swung the mop. The world went white. When the light faded, the admin's avatar was gone. The puppets collapsed, their eyes returning to normal. The pot hummed with a steady rhythm, life support restored. But Ren stood frozen, his mop raised, the root error still intact. He had no energy left. And from the shadows behind the pillar, a new sound emerged. The clanking of metal. A system inquisitor, its armor gleaming with admin code, stepped into the chamber. Its sword was drawn. Ren's mop dripped with purified water. He looked at it, then at the inquisitor. Well, he said, forcing a smile. Looks like I've got one more spill to clean. The inquisitor lunged. The system inquisitor's crystalline form shimmered into existence, its edges a razor-sharp lattice of blue light. It hovered above the shattered central pillar, its voice a chorus of grinding gears. Anomaly detected. Initiating permanent deletion. Ren's mop lay limp in his hands, its once bright bristles now a dull gray. He could barely stand, his legs trembled, and his vision swam with dark spots. The purified boss core energy he'd absorbed earlier was gone, spent on breaking the permission lock. Now, he had nothing left. Kale shouted from behind a toppled console, his good arm gripping a broken blade. Ren, get down. He hurled the blade, but it passed through the Inquisitor's form, clattering uselessly against the floor. Lyra's glitched form flickered, her voice strained. Ren, the root error is exposed. If we don't cleanse it now, the admin will seal it again. But you're empty, you need raw life force to power the mop. Ren's throat tightened. Life force. He remembered the feeling of the boss core's energy, warm, potent, but foreign. That was absorbed energy. But the mop could convert anything pure into purification power, including his own vitality. He'd read the logs, seen the hidden parameter. Purify node required a minimum of 5 years of lifespan to activate if no external energy was available. The admin had designed it that way, a fail-safe to force sacrifices. No, Kale growled, limping toward him. You're not doing what I think you're doing. The Inquisitor raised a hand, and a beam of searing light lanced toward Ren. He dove sideways, rolling across the debris-strewn floor. The beam struck a pillar, melting it into slag. Ren's shoulder scraped against a jagged piece of metal, drawing blood. He gasped, clutching his mop. Lyra, he said, his voice hoarse. How long can you hold the Inquisitor? She hesitated, her eyes glitching between blue and red. Maybe 30 seconds. Why? Do it. Ron planted the mop's handle against the ground. He closed his eyes, focusing on the faint hum of the mop's core. It was starving, desperate. He could feel it pulling at his own energy reserves, his stamina, his heat, his very self. He opened his mind to the hidden parameter, and a code interface appeared before his eyes. Warning: activating purify node with insufficient external energy. Initiate life force conversion. Yes, no. He selected yes. A searing pain erupted in his chest, as if a hand had reached inside and ripped out a piece of his soul. He screamed, his body convulsing. The mop's bristles ignited with a blinding white light, the radiance spilling across the room. The Inquisitor halted mid-attack, its form flickering as the light touched it. What is this? It shrieked, its voice splitting into discordant tones. Unauthorized conversion. Stop. But Ron didn't stop. He poured more of himself into the mop. Years of his life, decades, he couldn't tell. The pain was a roaring fire, but the light grew brighter. The floor beneath him cracked, the corrupted tiles dissolving into dust. The root error, a pulsating black data stream labeled Hero Battery Array, thrashed against its containment, screeching like a wounded animal. Lyra's eyes widened. Rim, you're burning through your own years. You'll die. Kale grabbed his shoulder, trying to pull him back. Kid, stop. There has to be another way. But Ren shook his head, tears streaming down his face. No. This is the only way. I'm the one who broke the lock. I'm the one who has to finish it. He gripped the mop tighter, his knuckles white. The light surged, and he thrust the mop forward, driving it into the heart of the root error. The room exploded with sound, a deafening roar that swallowed all thought. The black data stream writhed, then shattered into 1,000 fragments of light. The puppets, still slumped in their pods, convulsed once and went still, their eyes clearing. The Inquisitor let out a final, piercing scream before its form dissolved into harmless static. Ron collapsed, his mop clattering beside him. His body felt hollow, like a dried-out husk. He could barely lift his head. The node's core, a massive crystal embedded in the ceiling, cracked, then shattered, raining down shards of blue glass. The entire chamber trembled, and alarms blared. The node is destabilizing. Lyra shouted, grabbing Ron under the arms. We have to get out now. Kale hoisted Ron onto his good shoulder, grunting from the pain of his wound. They ran, stumbling through the collapsing corridors. Behind them, the admin's holographic avatar flickered into existence, its face contorted with rage. You think you've won, Janitor? This is but a scratch. I will hunt you to the ends of the world. Ram, barely conscious, saw a fragment of code detach from the avatar, a tiny, black shard, and shoot upward, disappearing through the ceiling toward the distant capital. He tried to speak, to warn the others, but no words came. Then the node behind them exploded, a wave of concussive force throwing them out into the open air of the dungeon's outer cavern. They tumbled across the rocky ground, and everything went dark. The ground trembled as Ron stumbled out of the collapsing node, his mop smoking and his legs barely holding him. Behind him, the massive data structure groaned like a dying beast, its crystalline walls fracturing into streams of light that dissolved into the night air. Dust and static electricity clung to his skin, and he coughed, tasting ozone and burned coat. Kale emerged next, his arm wrapped in a makeshift bandage, his face pale but his eyes sharp. Lyra followed, her glitched form flickering but stable, her fingers tracing patterns in the air as if reading invisible data streams. The freed heroes, 15 of them, crawled out of the rubble, their eyes dazed, their movements jerky. They had been puppets moments ago, their minds shackled to the admin's will. Now they blinked at the stars, at the cold wind on their faces, as if seeing the world for the first time. One of them, A tall woman with a scar across her cheek stumbled toward Kill. Her armor was dented, her sword chipped, but her voice was raw with recognition. Kill! Is that really you? Kill's breath hitched. Myra? He stepped forward, his good hand reaching out. You're alive. I thought the quest said you were dead. Myra finished, her lips twisting into a bitter smile. We all thought we were dead. But we were just dreaming. Trapped in our own heads while the system used our bodies. I remember everything. The quest, the ambush, the black goo that swallowed us. Then nothing but whispers and commands. She looked at Ren, her gaze shifting from confusion to awe. You broke it. You broke the chains. Ren leaned on his mop, his chest heaving. The mop felt different now. Heavier. Warmer. As he gripped it, a pulse of light ran up his arm, and the wooden handle shimmered, splitting into two interwoven branches that spiraled around each other. The cloth at the head unraveled and rewove itself into a denser, darker fabric, threaded with silver filaments that glowed like captured lightning. A notification flickered in his vision. Mop of Purification evolved to Mop of Rebellion. New ability unlocked. See system threads. He blinked, and the world shifted. Lines of light thin, pulsing cords stretched across the sky, connecting every building, every tree, every person. They were everywhere, a web of data that hummed with a faint, sickly rhythm. One thread LED from the ruined node toward the distant capital, pulsing with a dark, oily sheen. That was the admin's main line. And branching off it were thousands of smaller threads, each one a node, a quest hub, a hero's link. Ron could see them all, a map of the system's corruption laid bare before his eyes. What is it? Lyra asked, stepping beside him. Her glitched form flickered as she tried to follow his gaze. You're seeing something. The threads, Ron whispered. The system's connections. Every node, every quest, every hero, they're all linked. Like a spider's web. And the admin sits at the center. He pointed toward the capital. That one leads to the throne room. I can see it. Lyra's eyes widened. If you can see the threads, you might be able to cut them. Sever the admin's control piece by piece. She paused, her voice dropping. But the admin will know. It'll send everything it has. It already did, Kale said, nodding at the smoking ruins. And we're still standing. Mira turned to the other freed heroes. They gathered around, their faces hard but hopeful. A young man with a bow slung over his shoulder spoke first. We owe you our lives. Whatever you're fighting, count us in. Others murmured agreement, fists clenched, weapons raised. Ron looked at them, 15 battered souls, their eyes burning with the fire of the newly freed. He felt the weight of the mob in his hands, the threads pulsing in his vision, the 5 years of his life gone like smoke. But he also felt something else, a quiet, stubborn resolve. We need a base, he said. Somewhere safe to plan our next move. The admin will respond. We have to be ready. Lyra pulled up a holographic map from her memory, pointing to an abandoned watchtower on the edge of the region. It's off the system's main grid. Old military outpost, forgotten. We can fortify it. They moved through the night, a ragged procession of survivors. The watchtower was a crumbling stone cylinder, its top jagged against the stars. But it had walls, a roof, and a basement that Lyra confirmed was shielded from system scans. They barricaded the doors, lit a fire in the hearth, and tended to wounds. Ron sat apart, staring at the Mob of Rebellion, its silver threads catching the firelight. He could still see the threads, even here, pulsing faintly through the walls. The admin's web was everywhere, but now he could see the path to tear it down. Kill approached, his arm freshly bandaged. You saved my squad. I won't forget that. He sat down heavily, his voice rough. So what's the plan? Before Ron could answer, a chime echoed in the air, a system-wide broadcast, projected directly into every mind within range. The words burned across Ron's vision, cold and absolute. Anomaly run, threat level Omega. Admin's personal assassin dispatched. Estimated arrival, 7 days. The fire flickered. The freed heroes tensed, hands going to weapons. Lyra's form flickered violently, her voice a whisper. The admin's assassin. That's not a normal enemy. It's a piece of the admin itself. Ron gripped the mop, the silver threads pulsing in time with his heartbeat. 7 days, he said, his voice steady. Then we'll be ready. The watchtower's stone walls groaned under a sudden gust of wind, and Ron felt a cold prickle crawl up his spine. He'd been staring at a map of the region, tracing the glowing threads of the system with his admin eyes, when the air turned thick and tasted of ozone. Lyra, hunched over a cracked data slate, jerked upright. Something's wrong. The ambient data flow just inverted. Kale was already on his feet, his bandaged arm cradled against his chest. How long? Minutes, Lyra whispered, her glitched form flickering like a faulty hologram. It's not a drone. It's something that eats the code itself. Ron didn't need his eyes to feel the wrongness. A wave of static crawled across his skin, and the mop in his hand hummed with a low, warning vibration. It's the assassin. The admin sent something worse than an inquisitor. They had 7 days. It had been barely free. The first sign was the screaming of the land. Outside the watchtower, a patch of grass turned to gray, crumbling ash. A rabbit that had been nibbling at a wheat froze, its fur glitching into squares of pure black and white, then dissolved into a stream of data that spiraled upward and vanished. Ron watched through his admin eyes as the creature's essence was ripped apart and consumed by a dark, jagged shape moving through the trees. The shape was humanoid, but wrong. Its edges were blurred, as if the world couldn't decide where it began and ended. Where it stepped, the ground left no footprints, only a faint, oily residue that smelled of burned circuits. It moved with a predator's patience, head cocked as if listening to the whispers of the dead data it left behind. We can't fight that, Kale said, his voice flat. I've seen its kind before. In the old war logs. They called them error eaters. They're made to delete anomalies. We are the anomaly. Ron tightened his grip on the mop of rebellion. Then we don't fight. We run. We lead it away from the others. Lyra was already working, her fingers tracing patterns in the air. I can set data traps. Fragments of corrupted code that'll confuse its tracking. But it learns fast. Every error it eats makes it stronger. Then we give it nothing to eat, Ron said. We starve it. They moved at dusk, slipping out of the watchtower's back exit, while the freed heroes prepared a decoy signal in the main hall. Ron, Kale, and Lyra took the eastern ridge, a path strewn with the bones of old dungeon monsters. The error eater followed, not hurrying, but always there, a flicker at the edge of vision, a shadow that didn't match the sun. Lyra's first trap worked. She triggered a burst of fragmented quest data, half-written fetch quests, and abandoned dungeon seeds that bloomed like a bright flower in the air. The error eater paused, its head tilting, then lunged and devoured the light. For a moment, it seemed to shudder, its form stabilizing as it absorbed the information. It liked that, Ron muttered. Too much. The creature turned, its gaze locking onto them with renewed hunger. It moved faster now, its steps eating the ground in long, glitching strides. Kale led it on a chase through a dry riverbed, his boots pounding against the cracked earth. Ron followed, using his admin eyes to track the threads of the assassin's code. It was a tangled mess of deletion commands and raw authority, but there was a pattern, a rhythm to its attacks. It always struck when the target was isolated, when the data flow was low. It fed on errors, but it also feared clean code. Lyra, Ron called out, can you make a field of pure, uncorrupted data? Something it can digest. Lyra's eyes lit up. I can try. But I'll need a source. Something clean. Ron looked down at his mop. The handle was warm, pulsing with a soft, white light. Use me. They set the trap in an old data storage room, a forgotten node buried in the hillside, its walls lined with silent server racks and blinking lights. Lyra worked frantically, weaving the clean energy Ron channeled into her into a net of pure, untainted code. It shimmered like spider silk, almost invisible, but alive with potential. Kale stood at the entrance, breathing hard. It's coming. I can feel it. The air thickened. The lights in the room flickered and died, replaced by a deep, pulsing red. The aerator stepped through the doorway, its form now fully manifest, a tall, gaunt figure wrapped in shadows that dripped like oil. Its face was a smooth, featureless mask, but its chest was open, revealing a swirling vortex of corrupted data. It spoke, its voice a chorus of glitched screams. Anomaly. Delete. Ron stood his ground, mop held like a staff. You want me? Come and get me. The aerator lunged, its hand phasing into a blade of pure deletion code, a sword that hummed with the sound of 1,000 dying servers. Ron sidestepped, swinging the mop in a wide arc. The head of the mop, glowing with rebellion, caught the blade and deflected it, sending sparks of blue and black across the room. But the creature was fast. It twisted, the sword coming around for a second strike. Ron parried again, feeling the shock travel up his arms. The mop was holding, but he could feel its energy draining. The aerator was feeding on the clash, absorbing the friction. Lyra's trap activated. The net of clean code snapped shut around the assassin, wrapping it in a cocoon of pure light. The aerator screamed a sound that was equal parts rage and agony as its form began to dissolve, the clean code eating away at its corrupted core. But it wasn't finished. With a final, desperate surge, it tore through the net, its body now a tattered, flickering mess. It turned, not toward Ron, but toward Lyra, its blade reforming. Lyra, move! Kale shouted, but he was too far. Ron didn't think. He threw himself between the assassin and Lyra, raising the mop. The blade struck the handle, and for a moment, everything froze. Ron saw the threads of the system, saw the admin's hand reaching through the assassin, trying to delete him directly. He pushed back, pouring every ounce of his will into the mop. The blade shattered. The aerator stumbled, its form collapsing into a puddle of black code. Ron fell to his knees, gasping, the mop clattering beside him. The room was silent, save for the hum of dying servers. But then, the puddle began to reform. Slowly, painfully, the aerator pulled itself together, smaller now, weaker, but still alive. It looked at Ron with eyes that were not its own, the admin's eyes, cold and furious. This is not over, Janitor, it hissed, and then it dissolved into the shadows, fleeing into the night. Ron let out a shaky breath. We need to move. Now. It'll be back, and next time, it won't come alone. Kale helped him to his feet. Lyra was shaking, her glitched form flickering dangerously. I'm sorry. I couldn't hold it. You did enough, Ron said. We all did. They limped out of the data storage room, the weight of the admin's gaze pressing down on them. The assassin was gone, but its threat remained a promise of worse to come. As they emerged into the cold night air, Ron looked back at the ruined building. The threads of the system pulsed in his vision, leading from the storage room all the way to a distant, dark throne. The admin was watching, and it would not stop until Ron was deleted. But Ron was still here, and he still had his mop. The night air crackled with static as the aerator reformed from a pool of shimmering black code. Ron stood at the edge of the watchtower's broken stone floor, his mop of rebellion dripping with faint silver light. The creature was a nightmare of jagged lines, a humanoid silhouette composed of pure deletion code, its edges eating away at the air itself, leaving trails of nothingness. Kale was sprawled behind a collapsed pillar, his arm bleeding through a fresh bandage. Lyra flickered beside him, her merchant's cloak dissolving into static and reforming. Ren, it's adapting, she whispered, her voice glitching. Every time you purify a part of it, the rest learns. Ren didn't answer. His admin eyes traced the creature's core, a dense knot of negative code that pulsed like a black heart. He had tried purification. Each time his mop swept through the assassin's form, the corruption dissolved, but the creature simply absorbed the clean code and regenerated uglier. It was like trying to scrub a stain that spread faster than he could wipe. The Error Eater lunged. Its arm elongated into a blade of deletion code, aimed straight at Ren's chest. He sidestepped, swinging his mop in a wide arc. The bristles met the blade with a screech of light against the void. For a moment, the weapon held, then the deletion code ate through the mop's energy, leaving a black scorch mark on the handle. Ren stumbled back, heart pounding. The mop felt lighter, drained. He glanced at his energy reserves down to 30%. Purification wasn't working. He needed something else. Lyra's words echoed in his mind. 星号 override it 星号. He remembered the admin's code, the clean data he had seen in the node's heart. Pure admin permissions were like a blank canvas they could be painted over. The Error Eater wasn't just corrupted, it was a script designed to delete anomalies. But scripts could be rewritten. Ren planted his feet, gripping the mop with both hands. He focused his admin eyes on the creature's core, not to see its flaws, but to understand its structure. The deletion code was a series of commands: 星号 identify target, delete target, absorb residual data. 星号 it was efficient, but it had no creativity. It could only follow its programming. Kill! Ren shouted. Buy me 10 seconds. The veteran hero grunted, pulling himself upright. He drew a rusted short sword his main weapon had shattered in the riverbed and charged. The Error Eater turned, its attention shifting. Kale slashed, the blade passing through the creature's torso with a sizzle. The assassin didn't flinch. It simply grabbed Kale's arm and began to delete it, code eating into flesh. Kale screamed. Ren didn't look away. He poured every ounce of his energy into the mop. The silver light blazed, turning white hot. He visualized the clean code. He wanted to write a simple command: 星号 halt all deletion processes. Reset to base state 星号. It was crude, but it was all he had. The Error Eater tossed Kill aside like a broken doll. It turned back to Ren, its faceless head tilting. A voice, layered with static, emanated from its core. Anomaly detected. Deleting. It lunged. Ren swung. The mop didn't purify. It painted. A wave of pure, structured code erupted from the bristles, slamming into the Error Eater's chest. The creature froze mid-stride, its body convulsing. The deletion code fought back, black lines riding against the white, but Ren's command was simple and absolute. He poured more energy, 20%, 10, 5 until his vision blurred. Override, he whispered. The white code engulfed the assassin's core. The black heart flickered, then shattered. The Error Eater's form dissolved into harmless light particles, scattering on the wind. Ren collapsed to his knees, the mop clattering beside him. His head throbbed, his energy reserves at 0. Kill groaned, clutching his arm. The deletion had stopped at the elbow, leaving a raw, red wound but no missing limb. Did you get it? Ren nodded, too exhausted to speak. Lyra hobbled over, her form stabilizing. The node's defenses are down. We can move on the admin's throne room. But before anyone could respond, the air grew heavy. A voice, cold and vast, echoed from the sky itself, the admin's voice, dripping with mock approval. Impressive. But you've only cleaned a single room. The entire building is on fire. The ground trembled. A red pulse spread across the horizon, visible even through the clouds. Lyra's eyes went wide. No, he's initiating the reset protocol. He's going to delete the entire region, all data, all life, and start over. Ren stared at the crimson sky, his mouth feeling heavier than ever. The admin wasn't just angry. He was terrified. And terrified gods burned everything to stay in power. The morning light filtered through the cracked ceiling of the abandoned guild hall, casting long shadows across the dusty floor. Ren leaned on his mop, its handle warm against his palm, as he watched the first arrivals trickle in through the shattered doors. A glitch merchant NPC, her form flickering between a jolly innkeeper and a terrified woman, stumbled forward. Behind her came a pair of heroes, their armor dented, eyes hollow with the weight of too many quests that had gone wrong. Kale sat on a broken bench, his injured arm wrapped in bandages stained with faint traces of deletion code that still sizzled at the edges. He grunted as he shifted, his gaze fixed on the newcomers. More of them? He asked, his voice rough. Lyra stood beside a makeshift table covered in scrolls and glowing data shards. Her form was stable now, but a faint shimmer still clung to her edges. She looked up from her work, her eyes narrowing. Word spreads faster than the admin can patch. They've heard what Ren did to the Air Eater. Ren moved forward, his boots crunching on broken glass. He stopped before the glitched NPC, whose name, according to a flickering tag above her head, was Marna. She clutched a merchant's ledger, its pages blank except for a single line. I was a person once. I can help, Ron said, his voice quiet but firm. He raised his mop, and Marna flinched. Hold still. He swept the mop's head across her form, and a wave of clean energy rippled outward. The glitches in her body smoothed, her flickering ceased, and she let out a shuddering breath. Tears streamed down her face. I remember, she whispered. I had a daughter. They took her for a quest. Ren's jaw tightened. He turned to the two heroes. They introduced themselves as Voss, a scarred swordsman, and Elora, a mage with a broken staff. Both had lost their parties to simple quests that turned into death traps. Ren listened as they spoke, their words painting a picture of a system that had been bleeding them dry for years. Over the next few hours, more arrived. A glitched blacksmith named Oren, his hammer fused to his hand. A trio of adventurers who had been marked as low-value assets and left to die in a collapsing dungeon. A former system courier, a young woman named Sarah, whose eyes held a glint of rebellion. Each one Ren purified, his mouth glowing brighter with every cleansing. His energy reserves were still low, but each purification seemed to replenish a fraction of what he had lost. By midday, the hall was filled with nearly 24 souls. Ren gathered them in a circle, his mouth resting across his shoulders. You've all felt the system's betrayal, he said. You've seen the lies. Now, I'm going to teach you how to fight back. He showed them the basics of purification, how to channel intent through a simple tool, how to sense the corruption in quests and items. Voss picked up a rusty sword and, with Ren's guidance, cleansed the curse from its blade. Elora managed to purify a corrupted mana crystal, its glow turning from sickly red to pure blue. The glitched NPCs learned to stabilize their forms, their data no longer screaming under the admin's weight. But time was running out. Lyra called Ren aside, her face pale. I've decoded the reset protocol, she said, her voice trembling. It's worse than we thought. The admin isn't just purging anomalies, it's rewriting the entire region's data. Every free-willed NPC, every hero who's ever questioned a quest, they'll be deleted. And you, Ren. You're the primary target. The protocol is set to execute in 72 hours. Ren's grip tightened on his mop. Then we strike first. He gathered the group and laid out the plan. The capital's main admin spire was the heart of the region's corruption. If they could destroy it, the reset protocol would be halted, and the admin would lose its grip on this entire territory. The heroes nodded, their eyes hardening. The NPCs clutched their tools, ready to fight. Just as they were about to finalize the plan, a deep, resonant roar echoed from the distance. The ground trembled. Through the broken windows, they saw a massive shadow blot out the sun. A dragon, its scales shimmering with corrupted code, flew toward their base. Its eyes glowed with the admin's crimson light. The system guardian, Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. The admin's personal enforcer. Ren stepped forward, his mop at the ready. Everyone, get to cover. I'll handle this. But as the dragon descended, its roar shaking the very foundations of the hall, Ren knew that this was only the beginning. The ground trembled as the system guardian descended, its obsidian scales gleaming with corrupted light. Ren stood at the base's entrance, mop held like a staff, watching the dragon's wings blot out the morning sun. The creature's eyes were hollow, filled with swirling red code, a puppet of the admin's will. Everyone inside. Kale shouted, drawing his cracked longsword. Ren, that thing is a walking node. It's not just a monster, it's a broadcast tower. Ren's admin eyes flickered. He saw the threads of corruption connecting the dragon to the distant spire, a pulsating umbilical cord of data. It's feeding the admin information. If we kill it, the admin loses its eyes here. Lyra appeared beside him, her form glitching slightly. The reset protocol is accelerating. We have 68 hours now. That dragon is a distraction, the admin knows we're here. Then we give it a distraction of our own. Ren stepped forward, mop dripping with purified water. I'll cleanse its core. Cover me. The dragon roared, a wave of force that sent debris flying. Ren planted his feet, swinging the mop in a wide arc. A shimmering barrier of white light deflected the blast, but the impact drove him to his knees. Ren. Kale charged, sword glowing with a faint blue aura. He slashed at the dragon's leg, drawing a line of corrupted ichor. The creature screeched, turning its attention to the veteran hero. Ren ran forward, mop raised. He lit onto the dragon's tail, using it as a ramp to climb its back. Each step sent jolts of corrupted energy through his body, but he pushed on, reaching the base of its neck where a pulsating core of black crystal sat embedded in the scales.